everybody. Welcome to another edition of KCU. Like to introduce the panel right out of the chute. We've got Gord Randall and Justin Dunk at opposite ends of the country. But now it's time to say hello to Andrew Wadden. And there is a certain dog, a husky dog, out on the East Coast that maybe should have been put down like Old Yeller. But, Andrew, they did come back.
Well, that's right, Jimmy. Old Yeller came back from the grave, though, as Cujo. Let's get to the highlights. All right, out the gate we go, running. Just like Mounties QB Ryan Lauk almost takes it to the house. They punch it in, though, to take a 20-2 lead. Minutes later, Lauk to Dakota Brush. He shuffles his way into the end zone. MTA lead grows to 25 before the break. Huskies pivot. Brock Berglund, or is that Russell Wilson? Deep ball. Jordan Koch hauls it in. That led to a field goal. Huskies down 19 at the break. Second half, Berglund to Rick Lemoynian. Touchdown! Lead cut to 12. Before the queue closed, SMU cut it to 9. Fourth quarter, Berglund quick out to Trayvon Wright. He takes it to the house. The Dogs would add 2 more field goals, scoring 30 unanswered. They stun the Mounties. Yeah, so that Huskies' dubious losing streak comes to an end. Check out some of those numbers, though. New head coach James Colsey getting his first career CIS win in just his second game at the helm. Axes in Antigonish. Tavon Cook was up to his old tricks, 274 yards, 1 major in the air, 1 on the ground. He completed 79% of his passes. Do I hear heck Creighton consideration for this man? Anyone? Randall? Dunk? Mullen? Canada West action from the Toon. First cue, Quentin Chown goes 12 yards into the house. Dinos up 10-blank after 15. Second cue, Green Dogs rattle off 16 straight. Kyle Siemens first to Chad Braun for the major. 10 minutes later, back to Braun, putting Saski into the red zone. Sam Baker caps off the drive. Green Dogs take the lead, but in the fourth, Dinos claw the Huskies for 10 points. This field goal from Nico DeFonte in the final minute, sealing the win for the Prehistorics. Homecoming at UBC, a crowd of over 7,000 in attendance. They like what they saw early on. The Birds special teams putting them on the board first. 10-3 UBC at the half. In the third cue, the Pictons step up. Noah to cousin Mitch. That ties the game at 10. The Rams faithful, well, they're loving it. Minutes later, the cousin combo hook up once again. Rams going to Thunderbird and hand the T-Birds yet another loss. Yeah, and it didn't sit well with Coach Blake Mill.
To win some games. You know, I wasn't brought to UBC to lose football games. I'm not going to lose football games, so.
Why don't you tell us how you really feel there, Blake? Okay, over to the OUA. Yates Cup champs in the nation's capital. And we warned you last week about these GGs. This should come as no surprise. Derek Wendell to Mitch Baines. That put Ottawa up by 10 at the recess. Late fourth cue, James Roberts to Colton Jones. That caps off a 9-play, 75-yard drive. Griffins go up by 3. Under 2 minutes to go in the game. Ottawa drives to the Guelph 44-yard line, setting up a 51-yard field goal attempt. Lewis Ward nails it. Off to overtime we go. They trade some field goals until Wendell connected with Trevor Kennedy from 24 yards out. The GGs hand the Yates Cup champs yet another loss, taking it in double OT. Another big matchup was across town in Ottawa. In the fourth, Nathan Mesher nailed a chip shot from inside 10 yards as the G-Hawks remain unbeaten, squeaking by the Blackbirds. Over to the new Richardson Stadium. Queens playing host to Western on national TV, no less. Well, we'll have you done. But this was all Mustangs. To be accurate, well, it was all Alex Taylor. The third-year back rushed for 198 yards, but no majors. Put in all the work, but got none of the glory. Purple Ponies take it by 14. 47th annual Red and Blue Bowl in the 6. You see, kids, I'm catching on to the new lingo. If you like offense, well, this one's for you. Over 1,000 yards between the two squads. Toronto QB Marcus Hobbs tossed 2 majors and also scored 3 on the ground. Varsity Blues win their 4th straight Argo Cup, reasoned by the Lions. Blues head coach Greg Gary, he liked his team's balanced attack.
Well, after the first 3 weeks, we pretty much sat down as a staff and we said, what did we learn from it? And the one thing is we thought that we have to win as a collective. I thought on offense, I thought it really, really kind of rounded out. Once Marcus got that read down, we started pulling it, and then we really opened up the run game. Like we were gashing them. And then our pass game, the long ball, really worked well for us.
Let's wrap up the reel in the queue where the Carabins laid the smackdown on crosstown rivals Concordia. Sam Caron tossed close to 300 yards and two touches, while MTL D-back Jordan Perrin took this pick and went 46 yards or the 6. Then he let the camera know all about it. Carabins take it. Let's stick in Montreal. Can someone please tell me where these Redmen are from, because I'm not used to this team. Freddie Paquette tossed 222 yards, one major, as McGill wins its second in a row, wrestling the Gators to a 34-point loss. We head north of Montreal to Quebec City to wrap things up, Laval to be exact, where the Rouge et Or and the Vert et Or hooked up in the et Or Bowl. As usual, this one was all red and gold. Hugo Richard, well, he's in fine form this year. The third-year slinger tossed 347 yards, 3 scores in the air, while also taking 2 into the end zone himself. Laval takes it by 38, but Richard, well, he sees room for improvement.
On progresse à chaque semaine, donc ça, on est satisfait de ça, mais c'est vraiment pas où est-ce qu'on veut être. C'est sûr, on veut être à un point où est-ce qu'on a l'autre adversaire a de la misère à nous arrêter, puis on n'est pas tout à fait là-dessus encore.
Now it's time for headlines.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
What's the deal with attendance? Canada West early in the season is averaging 5,009 per game, up from this point last season. While the AUS is steady, the drop-offs are in the OUA and the RSEQ. In Quebec, it looks like the locals are holding back support for big games. The Carabins had 1 in 10 seats empty at the 5,100-seat Sept, and the Rouge et Or were down to 11,000 this Sunday. And I guess only Queens can answer for 2,500 empty seats for a grand opening of a new stadium. Any way to break down the logic of those numbers, Gord?
Well, Jim, I think you were spot on in Quebec in noting that you've got 2 fan bases there, the powerhouses there, that are tired of just being able to sleepwalk their way through the schedule. The numbers in Montreal looked a lot better for that opening game versus the Laval Rouge et Or. And it's just another season for them where they're going ho-hum, rolling to 50, 55-point victories like they did this past weekend versus a team that a lot of people think is the 3rd best team in that conference in Concordia.
Well, let's go over to my home province, fellas, and in Ontario. I think some of the reason for lower attendance numbers, at least to start the season, is first of all of these teams, or most of them that is, except for one that has a bye week in the opening week, play home games when students aren't even on campus yet. Now, that said, I want to challenge the universities out there to be more visible in terms of marketing. Get out there in front of the students' faces, especially the first-year kids, and make this something that they feel like they want to come back to. At least get them in that stadium. I don't care if you just let them in for free. Now, down in Ottawa, we've seen them do that with the Panda game. It's an event. It's talked about. It's hyped. That's why so many people show up. And this year, they're hoping to sell out TD Place when Ottawa plays Carleton, which could be a game that decides playoff positioning and potentially a home playoff matchup.
Well, last week we had a quarterback on that went through a double overtime. He was on the losing end of it. Derek Wendell, though, was on the winning end of one, and he joins us right now from Ottawa. Derek, talk to me, first of all, about Heck Crichton hype. Does it affect you at all to hear some of the talk associated with you here, especially now that you're in your 5th year?
I don't think it has too much of an effect on me personally. I kind of push that stuff to the side. I know our coach always talks about kind of not eating the cheese, so to speak, and focusing on the next team that we have to face. So I think for me personally, it's just getting in the office and being able to study film and focus as much as possible every week and put in the best effort that I can every week.
Talk to me about the process that Coach Baresi has. Is he studious? Does he break down the game? Is he an innovator? How would you describe him as a head coach?
I think he's very tactical on the way he kind of looks at defenses. He's creative, I think, with the different formations we use, the way we use our running backs, the type of runs that we do, the type of pass plays. We really look at different ways to attack the defense, how we can spread them out and leave 4 or 5 guys in the box, or especially for third downs and that kind of thing. Like, he's willing to take that step and allow us to execute and move on and get a first down. If it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 5 even, he gives us a chance, I think, out there every game. And I don't think you'll find someone who is in the office more than him. I guess the man will probably sleep 4 or 5 hours a night, and every time I'm in there, he's in there, and he's willing to do nothing but help me and help the rest of the team here to prepare as best as possible and give us a competitive advantage to win the game each week, no matter who our opponent might be.
Hey, Derek, we appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Now it's time for Weekend Warriors.
You go, I go, I'll go to Laval to take Hugo Richard, who had 5 touchdowns for the Laval Rouge et Or against a Sherbrooke team that had only given up 19 and 7 points respectively in games this season, threw for over 340 yards against the Verte Or in a big-time win for the Rouge et Or.
Well, let's stay in Laval, and Craig Smith called him the best route runner he has scouted on this side of the line going into the 2016 CFL draft, and the reps that Felix Faubert-Lucier are getting in Laval will do him and the Rouge et Or a world of good rather than occupying a spot on a CFL PR as an H-back. Catching the football like he did last year, he racked up 126 yards on 6 receptions and a TD. That is the FFL we know.
I'm going to head back to Ontario, and in the Laurier Golden Hawks' big 1-point victory over the Carleton Ravens last weekend, we saw a new guy emerge in that backfield doing his best Dylan Campbell impression. It's Eric Giltinen running for 200 yards on the ground. 200 yards for an offense that only threw for 46 all afternoon. He was their entire offense in a big conference win for Laurier as they jockey for position at the top of the OUA standings.
Saskatchewan lost by 1 to the Calgary Dinos in a game they could have won on Friday night without inside receiver Mitch Hillis and without fullback Shane Buchanan. The backbone of the offense was running back Tyler Chow, who was leading the nation with 169 yards per game heading into Game 3. Now, Chow hadn't practiced all week and even did not look ready for prime time in warm-up, but this kid battled through injury to provide some key runs and 65 yards on the ground to give the Dogs a chance. Afterwards, he was downright miserable and surly in defeat, and that is the way you want a competitor. Sometimes it's not the numbers, it's the fight that makes you a weekend warrior.
Fellas, I'll stick at the running back position and go to the game that I was at and watched live and take Western running back Alex Taylor. He was the entire offense pretty much for the Western Mustangs, other than a couple plays made here and there from Chris Merchant. 32 carries, 198 yards. The Mustangs only threw for 65 yards. And that backfield appeared to be a two-headed monster to start the year with Cedric Joseph, but it's clear after the Queens game that Taylor is the Mustangs' lead back.
And heading out to the Maritimes, we're looking at the St. Mary's Huskies, who exercised their demons, as Jim mentioned earlier. And the breakout star of that game was Brock Berglund, who threw for 271 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns, didn't throw a single pick. He also added almost 100 yards, 98 to be exact, on the ground in a massive win for the St. Mary's Huskies over one of the former powerhouses in this conference, the Mount Allison Mounties.
And speaking of Brock Berglund, we caught up with him earlier. And we are joined by the aforementioned Brock Berglund. And Brock, congratulations on that rally in your last game. Have you ever been part of a comeback quite that big before?
I've played in a lot of football games and been a part of a lot of wins, and never on the down 25 points to rally like that. And get a good team win in the fourth quarter like that was something pretty special on Friday night.
So let's go through your path here. You came out of Colorado High School. You were the number 3 ranked football player coming out of that state. You went to Kansas. You transferred out of Kansas. You went to North Texas, Northern Colorado. When you left high school, did you envision how much business side was involved with college football when you got immersed into it?
No, I mean, not initially. And everything football has been so simple since you start, with youth and you go through the Pee-wee and everything. It's just football. And, you don't really realize how much money and how many forces are at work with, people's lives are hanging on the line. There's employment, a lot of different things once you reach those higher levels. So, no, I didn't really realize it once I got to Kansas and Coach Gill. That kind of became a reality. So it was definitely something I was immersed in, but not something that I foresaw, especially when everything was smooth sailing through high school there.
What's it like to have a guy like Coach Colsey around who's been fully exposed to the American experience in the NCAA at a very high level?
Yeah, I think that we were just talking on the field earlier that we were just kind of talking about, because we go to Montreal this week to play in our crossover game. And we're talking about the different parts of the travel and how, we just have a lot of relatable things having been in the same kind of level with experience-wise and hearing some of the things that he has to say about where he's been and hearing the story, all the NFL guys they produced at Florida State in his time and his travels. And so he brings a lot of unique exposure and experience. And I think that only doesn't, just resonate with me, but with our guys. And, that his leadership and ability, really showed out there on the field on Friday night.
Well, you were selected as one of the weekend warriors here on KCU, so I wish I had a hat or a shirt for you. You're just going to have to live with the honor. Is that enough?
Appreciate it. I'm honored. Thanks so much.
Coming up, it's X's and Olsen with the coach.
Krown Countdown U is supported by the Guelph Griffins, the defending Yates Cup champions.
The CJFL made history with interlocking play. The Winnipeg Rifles traveled to Chilliwack and beat up on the Valley Huskers 35 Cobb. In a rematch of last year's Canadian Bowl game, the Saskatoon Hilltops proved once again they are still the team to beat in the CJFL. The Toppers trounced the Okanagan Sun in Kelowna 58-2, led by Logan Fisher, who rushed for 105 yards. West Shore took advantage of the OK loss, and they are now alone in top spot in the BCFC. Saskatoon supernovaed the Sun. Just how good are the Calgary Colts? And there's your leaders in Sept Division 1. Welcome back, everybody. Time to get an education with Coach Olsen.
This week's episode, we're going to focus on the UBC Thunderbirds and their defense of the Vanier Cup. Tough enough to get on top of the mountain, even harder to stay there, and especially when you lose 6 defensive starters. Let's take a look here. This is a clip from one of the opening plays in the Hardy Cup. 6 defensive starters are now gone. Gone, gone, gone. Both linebackers gone, and your safety is gone. Probably, though, the biggest subtraction that they're going to have to overcome is this guy right here, Quinn Van Gelswick, no longer there to flip the field. Great example of that, 67-yard punt in the air, flipping the field, advantage UBC. We're going to have to see how they deal with those subtractions if they're going to have a chance to repeat as Vanier Cup champions. The good news is UBC returns a lot of defensive backs. Let's take a look here at 2 of the key ones. You're going to have Katsatonis here, who is a huge player down the stretch run. And then you have Kevin Weens here, both defensive halfbacks, make a huge play in the playoff game versus the University of Manitoba that really set the stage for that blowout win. Let's roll this play. Here it is, looking deep down the seam. Two players converging on the football, tipped by Weens, right in the hands of Katsatonis, and a big return. Changes the momentum at the end of the second quarter and helps UBC going in to continue that into a huge win in the playoffs. Now let's look at the front seven. Let's see who has to step up there. The guy I think that's going to have to step up huge in their front seven is second-year player Connor Griffiths. He is a dominant physical force. Only 19 years old, played a lot on the weak side end, but also is going to move inside to that defensive tackle position. He is a guy that's got dynamic ability. Here he is going one-on-one with the Manitoba guard, turning speed into power and finishing with the sack. Dynamic player. All of these three guys are going to have to step up big for UBC to return to the Vanier Cup and repeat as champions.
Now it's time for What We Want to Know, or Triple W2K. Okay, I know you don't like the signs. I'll keep that to a minimum. Triple W2K, can the AUS show something in this crossover?
It's okay, Jim. I know we're just trying to stay hip. For the AUS, they have a huge opportunity and a huge risk this weekend as well. They schedule these crossover games every year at the Q, which is their only chance to see any exposure outside the conference, exhibition or regular season-wise. And the schedule works out in a way where 0-4 is a possibility for the AUS. 2-2 with a couple statement wins is also a possibility. And in particular, I'm keeping my eye on the ex-Concordia game, because Concordia, as I mentioned earlier in the show, a team that a lot of people see as the third best team in that Q conference, a competitive team for the most part versus the defending champions. That's a great barometer for the AUS to see where they really stand at this point in the season.
Well, I'm curious, just like Gord, to see how X does against Concordia, because we just assume that Montreal and Laval are going to roll up wins in their crossover matchups. So that's a game I'll be paying attention to, along with my good buddy Gord.
Well, straight back to you, Justin. Can Hugo Richard live up to his freshman year?
Well, that's a huge question. If you based it off what he's done lately in his last game against Sherbrooke with the 5 touchdowns, he was my weekend warrior, then yes. But 2015 was sort of a lost season for Hugo. He only played in 6 games, had a down year, especially when you consider he came off a 2014 campaign where he threw 22 touchdowns, over 2,500 yards, won the CIS Rookie of the Year award, and was a Heck Crichton nominee for the RSEQ conference. Yes, he was a quarterback of Laval, but he had the numbers to back it up. And at the time, there was legitimate consideration for him possibly winning the Heck Crichton as a rookie. So Hugo Richard looks like he's sort of getting back into that form based off what he did against Sherbrooke, but he needs to continue to do it, especially when you consider this offensive line is not quite the same in terms of pounding the football as it has been in past years. So Hugo, if he gets back on top, the Laval Rougeois have a chance to get back on top in the RSEQ.
I would agree with you for the most part there, Justin. I think there are incredibly encouraging signs out of Hugo Richard after being maligned for a good chunk of this past year. He's looking a lot better now, but I would say I don't think that he needs to play at quite the astronomical level as you would think. I compare Laval, and this comparison's been made before, but I compare Laval with Alabama in the United States in a lot of ways. And Alabama is a program that has been so strong everywhere else on the field that it hasn't really had to produce elite quarterback prospects, and it hasn't. I mean, if you look at the guys coming out of that program, there isn't really much in terms of high-profile guys making an impact at the next level. Hugo Richard, being a Canadian quarterback, has his work cut out for him anyway, but I think good, not necessarily all the way to great, is all that he needs to carry Laval to where they need to be this season.
Triple W2K, which of the conference champions is struggling more, UBC or Guelph?
Well, I took in that UBC homecoming game last weekend, and that performance was rough for the Thunderbirds. But the Guelph Griffins, they're a team that could easily be 1-3 right now. They had a miracle fourth quarter comeback versus Queens, came down multiple scores in that game to salvage what's now a 500 record. They haven't beaten anybody of note. Queens is winless. And now they draw Western this weekend, looking 2-3 straight in the face. The last team I can remember that struggled this much after winning the Yates Cup the previous year is a Queens team that I was a part of in 2010, who lost their starting quarterback and had to regroup that way. Guelph didn't lose their starting quarterback, and they brought back a lot of guys. So I don't know what is going on with the Griffins right now, Justin.
Well, guys, I'll pick out a couple position groups that were hit hard. And on defense, it was for UBC. They lost a lot of guys, especially in that secondary. And for Guelph, their receiving core was largely sort of decimated and left, except for Dre Frazier, who came back from Montreal Alouettes training camp. But even he was academically ineligible for the first 3 games of the season. So Guelph breaking in a lot of new pieces on offense. The offensive line is still strong. And as you said, Gord, that defense returns a lot of players in Guelph. So I'm surprised at both. I don't know if I'm shocked at more one than the other, but if I had to say one, it would be UBC, because that was the team that lifted the Vanier Cup last year.
I think both of these teams will pull themselves out of these tailspins. Triple W2K, what is the best team out of the winless teams out there, Justin?
For my money, it's got to be Queens, and I don't want to seem like I'm OUA biased at all, but they've been in some close games, and some turnovers have done them in late. They've had leads late in the ball game, or even against Western, they were within 1 score for the majority of the 4th quarter until Chris Merchant sealed it with a TD late. This team could easily be 3-0 if they just didn't keep making mistakes. And Nate Hobbs, the quarterback there, in these clutch situations, if Queens is going to get it turned around and potentially make the playoffs.
That implosion they had against Laurier was something special. It was snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Oh, and as I alluded to in my last point, they did the same thing versus Guelph earlier in the season. This Queens team is, just as Justin said, they've been competitive in every game. They're a team that easily could be 2-1. Sorry, right now they had a bye earlier this season, but instead they're 0-3 and they're looking way uphill. And the biggest thing with this Queens team right now is everything just looks kind of stale. And it's weird for me to say that given all the hoopla going on around this program. They've got new uniforms, they've got a new stadium, they're looking really strong off the field, but on the field it just hasn't translated so far. It'll be interesting to see how long it takes Queens to turn around. If you want to talk in this group of the team that might end up with the best record at the end of the season, I think it might be the Mount Allison Mounties. This is a team that still has a lot of key pieces in place from back-to-back Loney Bowls just a couple years ago. I believe that they have the goods to compete in that AUS conference still, but they're going to have to figure it out fast under their first-year head coach.
So thanks to everyone that participated in this week's show, and for anyone that wants to connect with us, look at the bottom of the screen. There it is on social media. But for now, let's get out to the game.
The CFL and our partners at Football Canada want to make sure we keep growing, promoting, and investing in a safe game. Hit! Football Canada now requires all amateur coaches to be safe contact trained by 2017. By creating a standard of safety for all in our football community, we're making an already great game even better. Make sure your youth coach is safe contact trained, because making a safe game means making a better game.